I'm Darren with Akshon Esports, and welcome back to another installment of Akshon Recap, the show where we highlight various stories ongoing within the esports community. As a prelude, I'd like to thank TizRobin311 for his translation of the tweets mentioned in this video. With that said, let's get started on this drama talk. For our first story of the day, Dallas Fuel is back in the news once again as their new Korean tank player OGE has found himself in a controversial bit of drama. You may recall in a previous episode of Akshon Recap, we covered Fissure's dislike of account boosters. Well, today he went full blast on Twitter calling out OGE, stating how his opinion hasn't changed on boosters and will hold them in contempt for an eternity. Fissure mentions how he used to cheer for OGE through DMs before realizing that he was a booster almost to a level where he would be ashamed of himself looking back at the time. He followed up saying if OGE has something to say to him, Fissure writes that OGE can come to the Gladiator's front door and say what he wants to his face. OGE responded more or less telling Fissure to back off because he doesn't understand the situation he was in that forced him to boost for money. Reading between the lines, it seems that OGE is implying he needed to boost out of financial necessity instead of doing so willingly. Quote, I know my wrongdoings, and that even boosting for 10 won is doing it, no matter how much. However, if you're not an insider, you wouldn't know the background. The actions are my fault, but I'm wondering if your way of speaking is the right thing. OGE's reason that he boosted out of necessity was met with criticism by the Korean community. Forums were outraged over this player's actions and have been ever since news of him being signed to the Fuel was announced. His 4-day suspension is seen as trivial by many who've been calling out for harsher punishments from the Overwatch League. While it may be swept under the rug in the West, Korean society holds gaming, especially on the professional level, to a higher standard, and boosting is heavily looked down upon. You have people like Runaway support Amy saying how he once empathized with OGE, but now feels stupid to have cheered him on as he wasn't the only one struggling financially and tells him to stop. For those who aren't aware, Korean Overwatch is pretty cutthroat. Players who don't find a place for themselves on a team with a big name and sponsors like Lunatic High in the past struggled financially to make a living, with many Apex teams not even paying their players at all. The general sentiment by the Korean Overwatch community is that OGE should stop trying to hide behind the premise of financial necessity, as he should have just gotten a part-time job if he really needed the money instead of doing something like boosting. That ruins the game for so many people regardless of how little money he was making. This is one of the reasons why Fissure's been so vocal about having OGE in the Overwatch League, as he points out that others went through a similar situation or are still experiencing it but still haven't resorted to boosting. Quote, my comments aren't shameful actions. I can say this as a fellow pro gamer in Overwatch League, and many pros before endured with little money. I may not know exactly about OGE, but did Recry and Architect not boost because their family was stable? They knew it was the wrong thing to do. Both players knew what was right and wrong, and I believe their financial situation was at least as bad as yours, if not worse. Sorry to everyone in Twitter for seeing. I'll be going now. Spoiler alert, this wasn't his last tweet. Fissure goes on in 2 more tweets, writing how he is not randomly attacking OGE out of the blue, and that if he wasn't a booster, he would have started off their relationship by just saying hi. This drama spilled over onto XQC's Twitter feed as Fissure replied to Felix saying that he would have been a better tank option playing alongside Effect than OGE. This was unexpectedly followed by Kai, who could not let the drama go on one-sided, tweeting for Fissure to, quote, calm down with your childish online vendettas. At the end of the day, all of us in Overwatch League are on the same team. This was met with Fissure saying how he was just stating the truth and that Kai should be ashamed of playing with the booster. To end off, it should also be mentioned that both Effect and Rascal don't like boosters either, so we'll have to wait and see how OGE's inclusion affects the team dynamic. Now, for our next story of the day, the official Boston Uprising Discord server announced this Wednesday that the company behind the Overwatch jerseys Into the AM is currently offering replacements for anyone who purchased a Boston Uprising Dreamkapzer jersey. By now, I'm sure you've heard of the allegations regarding the DPS player, specifically his sexual misconduct with minors and his termination from the Uprising. But just in case you're a bit confused, I'll leave a link in the description box below to a video we made on Monday covering the topic in depth. As one of the more prominent players on the Uprising, Dreamkapzer's jersey in particular was one of the most popular, which sadly left many Boston fans unhappy with the jersey of a player they no longer wish to be affiliated with, to put it lightly. This was a very professional move by the company, who is offering a replacement jersey to those who wish to make a return. If you happen to be one of those people who want to return, make sure to reach out to the company's support staff with the following email address: On a lighter topic, if you haven't seen last night's games, I highly recommend doing so. No spoilers, but especially the Dallas Fuel vs Seoul is one match you can't afford to miss. It was an incredible throwback to their Stage 1 encounter that at the end of the day made fans proud regardless of who walked away with the win. We got to see Fleta back on stage doing what he does best. Ryuje hung on Anna once again, and his team, while missing Zumba, was working like a well-oiled machine after a shaky start to Stage 3. For those of you wondering what happened to Zumba, the Seoul Dynasty tweeted that he was sitting out last night due to a minor injury. Whether this is the case or something that could be more of a damaging long-term condition like carpal tunnel remains unknown, but it has been confirmed by Overwatch League insider Zoe that the player will be out for the rest of this week. As for Dallas, Unco displayed moments of brilliance on Zenyatta. Their Korean tank player OGE debuted with some highlight reel-worthy Winston plays, and of course, Effect playing out of his mind on Tracer, which acted as a reminder of just how much raw talent the Fuel have on their roster. This series was a roller coaster of emotions and extremely close, despite what their respective placement in the rankings would suggest otherwise. What are your thoughts on some of the stories we went over today? Specifically, do you think Fissure's in the right, or do you think that all of this drama between him and OGE is being blown out of proportion? We'd love to hear your take on it in the comment section below, or any of the other stories we covered today. And with that, that's all for this installment of Action Recap. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to, well, like it, and also subscribe to stay up to date when we release more content. And if you happen to share this video, that helps us out a lot, so we'd appreciate it. This has been Darren from Action Esports, and we'll see you in the next one.